If you're looking for some good Star Trek to fill the void left by today's less than stellar examples, then ReExamined Reads, the Star Trek edition, is for you. We'll review works written in the 1960s all the way up until about 2012. We'll see which ones pass the tests of good writing, plot, characters, and canon, and measure up to the old standard of Trek. We're looking for those books you pick up when you're bored with rewatching all the old school series and you just need that Star Trek fix. We'll cover works written for Star Trek the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and even Enterprise. We'll evaluate works on a 1 through 5 star rating system, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. We won't be including Discovery or the J.J. Abrams rewrites. You can find more information on the reasons for excluding these shows, as well as a better look at the rating system on the videos ReExamined Reads Getting Started and ReExamined Reads Rating Star Trek Novels, both located on this channel. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. Feedback is always welcome below, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at ReExamined Reads. On this edition of ReExamined Reads, we take a look at Blackfire, an old-school Star Trek novel by Sony Cooper. It was published in 1983 by Pocket Books, a division of Simon & Schuster. It is available on Amazon. See the link below. This novel doesn't give an exact time it takes place, but it's set in the years after Star Trek the Motion Picture, but before the events of the Wrath of Khan. Normally, I like to give you a list of episodes or movies to watch to enhance the experience of reading the work being reviewed. In this case, watch Deep Space Nine's Season 6 In the Pale Moonlight. That episode has nothing to do with this book, but it's a really good Star Trek story, which this book is not. So let's take a look at the plot without giving too much away. An explosion occurs on the bridge of the Enterprise, which at this time is being used by Starfleet Command to train cadets. There is so much damage to the ship's primary hull that the crew is forced to evacuate to the secondary hull and separate the ship. The secondary hull limps back to Starbase for repairs. Kirk is badly injured and out of action, and it will take months for him to recover. Spock is also injured in the blast, but through the magic of Vulcan discipline, manages to function with a large chunk of metal in his back. Despite his injuries, he takes command and begins an investigation. Sometime later, Spock and Scotty find evidence that it was a bomb that caused the explosion, and they set out to discover who planted it and why. They steal a ship and head towards a mysterious set of coordinates on the far edge of charted space. Since Spock and Scotty didn't get permission to take on this mission, they are charged by Starfleet with desertion and theft of a ship. All of this occurs with that chunk of metal still in Spock's back. Finally reaching their destination, the pair encounter a new race called the Tamari and find this race also planted bombs on Romulan and Klingon ships. We discover the motivation of the Tamari was to evaluate the strength of all 3 major powers and lure representatives of each government to a mysterious planet where they can be kidnapped. While the first few pages of this novel are well written and thought out, it's a train wreck from about page 10 on. The main plot unfolds into one of the most absurd Star Trek novels ever written, and is nothing more than an ill-conceived romance novel for those who enjoy Mr. Spock at the center of their fantasies. Hyper-focus on the character of Spock, and in some cases Kirk, in and of itself doesn't make for a bad novel. There are books where one or the other is portrayed in a way that suggests the writer had some romantic notions towards the character, but they're actually pretty good reads. Not so with Blackfire. The plot requires a suspension of belief, and in most aspects of reality. Cooper doesn't seem to write the characters very well either. For example, in the secondary plot, after months of recovery, James Kirk is finally able to resume command. He returns to his ship and is ready to depart space dock. He calls engineering, only to find that Mr. Scott is no longer assigned to the ship, and after some checking, finds Mr. Spock is gone as well. We're expected to believe that Kirk didn't hear that 2 of his officers, 2 of Starfleet's most prominent and decorated members, have been charged with theft and desertion, and he's just finding out about this now. No news outlet covered it, none of the crew, especially the bridge crew, mentioned it. McCoy, who attended Kirk's long recovery and knew the circumstances, didn't say a thing in all that time. Another nitpick I have is, does anyone think that Mr. Scott would leave his beloved Enterprise when it was sitting in space dock in need of massive repairs? These characters are not written in character, and it just makes this bad novel that much worse. This author takes us in a number of odd directions. None of them are realistic or even plausible. From an enemy race that borders on absurd to Mr. Spock becoming a pirate, then serving in the Romulan fleet. Not really sure why the Vulcan who committed espionage, stole the Romulan cloaking device, and embarrassed the Empire beyond belief wasn't killed on the spot, but the author thought it was plausible. I'm sorry, but we can't recommend this book on any level. It fails on almost every front. The main and subplots border between formulaic and awful. The characters are not in character, and the entire novel makes little to no sense. As much as it pains us to trash a work that someone clearly put some effort into, ReExamined Reads is forced to give Blackfire a 1-star rating. It is one of the worst Star Trek novels ever written. If you see it on the shelf, leave it. If you see it on a friend's bookshelf and they want to loan it to you, beware. It's just a pretense for getting rid of something they didn't take the time to dispose of properly. In investigating how this disaster got published, we did a little research on the author. It turns out she worked for William Shatner. I guess that solves that mystery. If you made the mistake of already reading this work, leave your comments below with any suggestions for Star Trek novels you'd like to see reviewed in the future. If you really enjoyed this presentation, after you like and subscribe, send the link to this channel to your favorite Star Trek fan. It would be much appreciated. As always, thank you for watching.